Mom, can we go to Aunt Rose's cabin this summer? I miss the animals and the open fields, Ellie said, her eyes sparkling with anticipation. I glanced at her from the kitchen sink, wiped my hands on a towel, and smiled. Of course, sweetheart. We'll go as soon as school is out. Ellie beamed, her face lighting up the room. Derek, my husband, sat at the dining table, scrolling through his phone. He barely looked up. Can't you two ever stay home? This cabin obsession is ridiculous. Derek, it's just a few weeks. Ellie loves it there, and so do I said, my voice calm but firm. Ellie, undeterred by her father's lack of enthusiasm, joined in. Yes, I can't wait to help Aunt Rose with the animals again. Derek sighed, tapping incessantly on his phone. Well, don't expect me to join. I've got too much work. Projects don't manage themselves. Fine, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. We'll manage without you. His eyes finally met mine, a flicker of frustration surfacing. Just make sure you stay reachable. I don't want the same issue as last time. I nodded, turning back to Ellie. Start packing your things, kiddo. We leave Saturday morning. Ellie dashed out of the room, her excitement palpable. Derek pushed his chair back noisily, the legs scraping against the floor. Anyway, I'm heading out. Got a late meeting, he muttered, picking up his briefcase. Still clutching the towel, I watched him walk towards the door. Don't wait up, he added before leaving without a second glance. The door clicked shut, leaving a silence that felt heavier than it should have. Saturday arrived swiftly. The drive to Rose's cabin was long but peaceful. Ellie sang along to her favorite songs as we navigated through winding roads and lush forests. When we finally pulled up to the cabin, Rose was already outside, waving enthusiastically. Aunt Rose, Ellie hollered, leaping out of the car and sprinting towards her. Rose caught her in a big hug, laughing heartily. Look at you, you've grown since I last saw you, Rose exclaimed, ruffling Ellie's hair. I joined them, giving Rose a tight hug. It's good to be here, I admitted, breathing in the crisp mountain air. Come on in. Maxwell's inside making lunch, Rose said, guiding us towards the door. Inside, the cabin smelled like home. Fresh bread, herbs, and a hint of something sweet. Maxwell, Rose's husband, greeted us with his apron on, brandishing a spatula like a knight with his sword. Ladies, welcome back. Ready for some homemade lasagna? He asked, grinning widely. As we settled in, I felt a sense of peace wash over me, the opposite of the tension back at home. Ellie quickly got busy helping Rose feed the animals while I unpacked. That evening, we all sat around the dinner table, the warm glow of the cabin's light casting cozy shadows. Ellie chatted with Rose and Maxwell about school, her friends, and excitement for summer. Rose glanced at me, her eyes silently asking how things were. I gave her a small nod, indicating we'd talk later. Later that night, while Ellie slept soundly in the loft, Rose and I sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets against the cool night air. So, how's Derek? Rose asked cautiously. Working as usual, I replied, taking a sip from my mug. Things aren't great, Rose. He's distant, always working or on his phone, Rose sighed. I see. And you? How are you holding up? One day at a time, I said, forcing a smile. But being here helps. It's like a breath of fresh air after years of suffocation. Rose reached over and squeezed my hand. Remember, you always have us. This place is as much yours as it is ours. The weight of her words settled over me, filling me with a sense of hope and strength I hadn't felt in a while. Watching the stars twinkle above, I allowed myself to imagine a future, one where Ellie and I found true happiness, even if that meant breaking away from Derek's oppressive indifference. Sunday morning at the cabin started with the sounds of roosters crowing and cows mooing. Ellie was already up and about, helping Rose with the morning chores. I could hear her giggles drifting through the open window as I slowly woke up, appreciating the quiet bustle of the farm. I grabbed a cup of coffee and walked outside to join them. Ellie was brushing one of the horses, her face aglow with happiness. Rose gave me a knowing smile from the chicken coop. Morning, sis. Ready to dive into farm life? She teased, scattering feed for the clucking chickens. I'm ready, I answered, taking a sip of my coffee and feeling more at peace than I had in months. Entering the barn, I noticed the walls covered with old family photos and memorabilia. One picture showed Rose and me as kids, sitting on the same horse Ellie was now brushing. This place was full of history and life, everything my suburban home wasn't. Suddenly, my phone buzzed with a message from Derek. Where are the files I asked for? This is urgent. I replied quickly, hands trembling slightly. I sent them last night. Did you check your email? His reply came swiftly. Check again. They're not there. Why can't you do anything, right? Rose must have seen the tension on my face. She walked over, wiping her hands on her jeans. Is it Derek? Yeah, he's on about work, as usual. I sighed, pocketing my phone. Rose raised an eyebrow. He should know you're on break. Doesn't he try to grasp family time at all? I shook my head, feeling a knot tighten in my chest. Let's not talk about him right now. What's next on our farm to-do list? By the afternoon, Maxwell and Ellie had convinced me to join them in the fields to check on the crops. I watched as Ellie ran happily between the rows, her hair catching the golden light. This was what freedom felt like. Maxwell handed me a basket. Think you can handle picking tomatoes? I think I can manage, I replied with a smile, bending down to start picking the ripe, red fruits. Meanwhile, my phone buzzed again, but this time I ignored it, focusing instead on the weight of the tomatoes in my hand and the richness of the soil beneath my feet. Later that day, Derek called. His voice was sharp, cutting through the serenity of the farm like a knife. Why didn't you respond to my texts? What's so important there that you can't manage a simple email? We're busy here, Derek. It's good for Ellie to be outside, you know? I answered, trying to keep my tone even. She needs stability, not to be dragged off to the middle of nowhere, he retorted. I turned away from the house, looking out at the rolling fields. She's stable here, happier than she's been in a long time. A heavy silence hung on the line before Derek spoke again, his voice dripping with sarcasm. Well, enjoy playing farmer. Don't count on me rescuing you when this little fantasy falls apart. As the call ended, I felt a wave of emotion swell inside me. Anger, frustration, and a fierce protectiveness towards Ellie and our time at the cabin. Rose came up behind me, placing a comforting hand on my shoulder. Hey, everything okay? I forced a smile. Yeah, just Derek being Derek. Rose nodded knowingly. He'll never understand this life, but that's his loss, not ours. Looking around at the calm and beauty surrounding us, I realized Rose was right. Derek might never get it, but that wasn't my problem anymore. Here in the mountains, I felt a sense of clarity and strength, a place where our lives could be rebuilt, one simple, fulfilling day at a time. We had been at Rose's cabin for a little over a week when Ellie came rushing in with wide eyes. Mom, I saw a fox near the chicken coop. He was trying to get in. Rose looked up from the kitchen table, concern etched on her face. A fox, that's not good. We need to secure the coop better. Ellie nodded earnestly. Can we build something to protect the chickens? Rose smiled. Sure thing. We can make a stronger fence and set up some lights to scare it away. I was getting coffee when an idea hit me. Actually, I read about a new eco-friendly project at work. It uses renewable energy to create deterrents for predators. Maybe we could apply that to the farm. Really, Mom? That sounds cool. Ellie's eyes sparkled with renewed excitement. Rose got up, intrigued. Tell me more about it. I explained the concept, feeling a surge of enthusiasm. It's an ecotech project. It's solar-powered lights and sounds to keep predators away without harming them. I could talk to my boss and see if we could test it out here. Maxwell chimed in from the doorway. Sounds like a great idea. Anything to keep the chickens safe and maybe even make things more sustainable around here. A few days later, I broached the project idea with my boss during a video call. I was thinking maybe we could pilot our ecotech project at my sister's farm. It's perfect for testing renewable energy solutions. My boss, a middle-aged man with a kind face, nodded thoughtfully. That's an interesting proposal, Hannah. If it works, it could be a great case study. Go ahead and draft a plan, and we'll review it. I felt a jolt of excitement as I hung up the call. Ellie had overheard the conversation and came running. Mom, are we really going to help Aunt Rose with your project? Yes, Ellie. If it gets approved, it'll be a great help to the farm. That night, I couldn't help but share the news with Derek, hoping for a small sign of encouragement. I talked to my boss about the eco project. He's interested. We might get to pilot it here. Derek snorted. You're really planning to dig in the dirt now? How ambitious. I clenched my teeth, trying to keep calm. It's not about dirt. It's about making a difference, using what I know to help my family. He scoffed, his voice dripping with disdain. Just make sure you don't mess it up. I can't have you falling behind at work because of this ridiculous farm fantasy. I hung up, feeling a mix of anger and determination. Derek's words stung, but they also fueled my resolve. This project wasn't just about the farm, it was a chance to show him and myself what I was capable of. After that call, Rose found me sitting on the porch, looking out at the darkened fields. Rough conversation? I nodded. Derek doesn't believe I can do it, but I need to prove him wrong for Ellie's sake and mine. Rose sat down beside me, her presence comforting. You've got this, Hannah. Whatever you need, we're here to support you. Hearing those words gave me the strength to push forward. I went back inside, ready to start drafting a detailed plan for the ecotech project. As the days went by, I poured myself into the proposal, detailing every step and potential outcome. Each part of the plan felt like one more way to break free from Derek's toxic grip, to create a better future for Ellie and me. Finally, I submitted the plan to my boss. Now, all that was left was to wait for approval, but deep down, I knew I was already moving forward. Here at the cabin, we had started something real, something that could change everything. The sun was setting when Ellie wandered into the living room, her face thoughtful. Mom, I saw Daddy with a lady today. I glanced up from my laptop, my heart skipping a beat. What do you mean, sweetie? While we were driving back from town, he was at a cafe with a lady. They were holding hands. The room seemed to close in around me. Rose, sitting nearby, caught my eye. She looked as shocked as I felt. Did you recognize her? I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. Ellie shook her head. No, but they looked very friendly. I nodded slowly, masking my emotions. Thanks for telling me, Ellie. Matt, why don't you go finish your homework? Once Ellie had left the room, Rose leaned in, concerned. What do you think is going on, Hannah? I exhaled deeply. I don't know, but it's time I found out for sure. The next day, I decided to call a private investigator. The idea of an affair had tormented me before, but Ellie's observation pushed me to act. I listed all the details I knew, feeling a mix of dread and determination. As days went by, I fell into a routine at the cabin, masking my anxiety with work on the eco project. Then the investigator called. Hannah, I have some information. Derek's been meeting a woman regularly. I have photos and messages. My stomach churned, but I steadied myself. Send me everything. The evidence came through email, a series of incriminating photos, clearly showing Derek and a woman at various places. My hands shook as I clicked on the messages, reading his flirtatious and deceitful words. With a deep breath, I called Derek. We need to talk. He sighed loudly. What now, Hannah? I know about her. I've seen the messages and the photos. There was a pause before he responded, aggravation dripping from his voice. So what? Was it your little detective act that uncovered this? You were never here anyway, always off playing farmer. I clenched my fists, the anger building. I was here for our daughter and our family. You're the one who shirked responsibility. His laugh was cold and unfeeling. Responsibility, right? Look, don't pretend you're some saint. Enjoy your cabin life while it lasts. I could hear the contempt in his words, but it only steeled my resolve. Derek, I'm done. I deserve better. Ellie deserves better. I'm starting divorce proceedings. Silence lingered before he spoke, voice rigid with controlled rage. Fine, do whatever you think you have to, but don't expect this to be easy. Hanging up, I felt a strange relief wash over me. It was time to move forward, free from his deceit and toxic presence. I found Rose in the garden, her hands deep in the soil. How did it go? She asked, wiping dirt off her hands. I told him it's over, I replied, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. I'm going to start the proceedings. It's time, for me and for Ellie. Rose stood and hugged me. Good for you, Hannah. We'll do this together. As the days passed, I started gathering everything needed for the legal battle ahead. The cabin felt more like home with each passing day, a place where Ellie and I could build a new life, one honest step at a time. With support from Rose and Maxwell, I contacted a lawyer to begin the divorce process. The road ahead was daunting, but for the first time in a long time, I felt empowered. Our new beginning was within reach, firmly rooted in the love and strength of family. I stepped into the lawyer's office, my heart pounding. A young assistant guided me to a sleek conference room where a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a confident smile greeted me. Ms. Anderson, I'm Karen Mitchell. Please, sit down, she said, extending her hand. Shaking her hand, I sat down. Thank you for seeing me on such short notice. Karen leaned forward, her demeanor professional yet warm. Let's get straight to it. You've decided to file for divorce. Tell me everything. I recounted the recent events, culminating with Derek's blatant admission of infidelity. Karen took notes, nodding occasionally. We need to gather all possible evidence of his misconduct. This will strengthen your case, especially concerning alimony and child support. A sudden thought struck me. Derek's former colleague, Karen, might help. She's openly despised him since he mishandled a project that cost her a promotion. Karen arched an eyebrow. Do you think she'd testify against him? I believe she would. She's got no love lost for Derek. Karen smiled. Good. I'll contact her. Leaving the office, I felt the first flickers of hope. I was taking steps, concrete steps, towards a better future for Ellie and me. The sense of forward movement was empowering. Back at the cabin, Ellie met me at the door. Mom, how did it go? I knelt down, hugging her tightly. We're making progress, Ellie. We're going to be okay. A few days later, Karen, Derek's former colleague, agreed to meet us at a local cafe. She was a tall woman with a no-nonsense demeanor, her eyes sharp and assessing. So, Derek finally screwed up enough for you to leave him, huh? Karen said, sipping her coffee. I nodded, feeling a pang of hurt at the bluntness. He's been having an affair. I need to prove his irresponsibility, especially financially. Karen leaned in slightly. Believe me, I've got dirt on Derek. He's been fudging accounts and embezzling funds. My stomach turned. Can you prove this? Karen gave a wicked smile. I've got emails, transaction records, the works. I've been saving them for an occasion exactly like this. Later, I shared the news with Rose and Maxwell at the dinner table. Ellie was at her friend's house, so it was just the three of us. Karen's going to help. She has proof Derek's been embezzling, I said. Rose's fork froze halfway to her mouth. Embezzling? That changes everything. Maxwell nodded. If he's guilty of fraud, we've got leverage. He can't brush this off or bully you into submission. Armed with Karen's evidence, I felt more prepared than ever. The next week dragged by in a blur of legal preparations and emotional turmoil. Finally, the day of confrontation arrived. Derek showed up at the lawyer's office, his expression a mix of anger and defiance. What's this about, Hannah? More baseless accusations? I stood tall, Karen by my side. No, Derek, this is about your fraudulent activities and how you've wronged our family. The color drained from his face, disbelief and rage battling for dominance. You're bluffing, he spat. Karen laid out the evidence calmly, piece by piece. Derek's facade crumbled as he realized the gravity of his situation. This is insane. You can't trust her. She's lying. Karen looked unperturbed. The court will decide that, Mr. Anderson. I watched Derek, his composure shattering, revealing the scared, selfish man beneath. What do you want? He finally muttered, beaten. I want a fair divorce settlement, full custody of Ellie, and alimony, I stated firmly. Derek's eyes were cold, but he knew there was no escape. Fine, take what you want, just get out of my life. As I walked out of the office, a mixture of relief and resolve flooded me. Rose and Maxwell were waiting outside, their faces alight with anticipation. It's over? I told them, my voice steady. We've won the first battle. Rose hugged me tightly. You did it, Hannah. Now it's time for the next chapter. Maxwell clapped me on the back. Onwards and upwards, sister. With their support and the evidence in our favor, the future began to glow with promise. It was time to build a new life, one where Ellie and I could truly thrive. The courtroom buzzed with hushed whispers as I took my seat next to Karen. Derek's attorney, a grizzled man with a stern face, shuffled papers at the opposite table. Derek sat beside him, glaring at me with a mixture of anger and desperation. Karen leaned over, her voice low but reassuring. Stick to the facts. We have all the evidence we need. The judge, a stern-looking man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, banged his gavel. Court is now in session for the case of Anderson versus Anderson. Derek's lawyer stood up first, his voice smooth and rehearsed. Your Honor, we contend that Mrs. Anderson is exaggerating claims of misconduct to gain an unfair advantage in the divorce settlement. I felt a surge of anger, but Karen squeezed my arm subtly, grounding me. When it was our turn, Karen presented the evidence methodically, starting with Derek's infidelity. Your Honor, here are messages proving Mr. Anderson's affair, she said, handing the judge a folder. The judge glanced over the papers, then looked at Derek. Mr. Anderson, do you deny the validity of these messages? Derek remained silent, his face a mix of defiance and fear. Next, Karen presented the evidence of embezzlement. She displayed emails, bank statements, and transaction records, each a nail in Derek's coffin. This evidence clearly highlights Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities, which have compromised not only his marriage, but also his professional integrity, Karen stated firmly. Derek's lawyer attempted to object, but the judge silenced him with a wave of his hand. Mr. Anderson, do you have any defense for these claims? Derek stood up, his facade crumbling. These are lies, fabrications to ruin me. The judge's gaze was cold. The evidence speaks loud and clear, Mr. Anderson. Karen shot me a supportive glance. It was time for the final blow. Karen stood up. Your Honor, we ask for full custody of Ellie Anderson, alimony, and that Mr. Anderson be held accountable for his fraudulent actions. Derek exploded. This is a setup. She's turning my daughter against me. The judge banged his gavel again, bringing order to the chaos. Mr. Anderson, enough. I will review the evidence and issue a ruling shortly. We left the courtroom to wait for the judge's decision, my nerves stretched thin. Rose and Maxwell arrived, bringing comfort and moral support. Finally, the judge called us back in. As everyone settled, he looked straight at Derek, his voice firm. Based on the overwhelming evidence of infidelity and financial misconduct, this court grants Mrs. Anderson full custody of Ellie Anderson, as well as alimony and child support. Furthermore, I am referring Mr. Anderson's fraudulent activities to the appropriate authorities. Derek's face turned white, then red with fury. This is a witch hunt, he screamed. You can't do this to me. Karen stood up, unflappable. Justice has been served, Mr. Anderson. The judge banged his gavel one last time. Court is adjourned. As we filed out, a weight lifted off my shoulders. Rose hugged me tightly, her eyes filled with tears of relief. It's finally over, Hannah. You did it. Ellie, who had been waiting with Maxwell in the hallway, ran up to me. Mom, are we really away from Dad now? I picked her up, holding her close. Yes, sweetheart, we're free. Maxwell clapped me on the back. Time to start that new chapter, huh? I nodded, my heart swelling with hope. With Derek facing legal consequences and having lost the fight, the path was clear. Karen shook my hand warmly. You were strong through this, Hannah. Now, go make that new life you deserve. As we left the courthouse, I felt a sense of renewal. The battle had been fierce, but we had emerged victorious. The road ahead was bright and open, ready for us to walk it together as a family. Weeks after the court's ruling, the news about Derek's financial misconduct spread like wildfire. His once commanding presence at work was reduced to whispers and suspicious glances. One afternoon, Karen called me. Hannah, have you seen the news? No. Why? I asked, sensing something significant. Derek's been fired. The board found out about his embezzlement. They've terminated his contract. I felt a rush of satisfaction. He's really facing the consequences now. Karen chuckled. It's far from over. He's being investigated by the authorities for fraud. He won't be getting away with anything. At home, Rose and I couldn't help but feel a sense of justice. Later that evening, Ellie and I sat on the porch, the sky painted with the hues of sunset. Mom, will Daddy be okay? She asked softly. I looked at her, choosing my words carefully. He made bad choices, sweetie. Now he has to face the music. But you and I, we're safe, and that's what matters. News outlets soon picked up Derek's story, his name plastered with accusations and scandal. One day, Karen called again, sounding triumphant. Hannah, the judge ruled that Derek must pay full child support and alimony. They've frozen his assets to cover it. I felt a mix of relief and triumph. Thank you, Karen. You've been incredible through all this. My pleasure, Hannah. Now go enjoy your life. The following weeks brought more signs of Derek's downfall. He tried to contact me several times, but I ignored his calls. One evening, I finally picked up, anticipating his outrage. You've ruined my life, Hannah. Derek's voice was a blend of anger and desperation. You did this to yourself, Derek, I replied evenly. You made your choices. Now live with them. Do you think you're so perfect? You're just hiding on that stupid farm, pretending everything's okay, he sneered. I took a deep breath, holding back a retort. Ellie and I are happy, Derek. We're moving on, and you should do the same. Slamming the phone down, I felt a weight lift off my shoulders. Derek's words couldn't hurt us anymore. A few days later, Rose came rushing into the cabin with the newspaper. Hannah, look at this! The headline read, Former executive faces jail time for fraud. The article detailed Derek's impending court dates and the serious charges against him. Maxwell clapped his hands, grinning. Looks like karma finally caught up with him. I nodded, feeling a deep sense of closure. It's over. Really over. Ellie joined us, her face curious. What's going on? I hugged her tightly. Nothing to worry about, sweetie. Just some old news. We're free now. Ellie's smile reaffirmed what I felt inside. The shadow Derek had cast over our lives was gone. We could now embrace the future without looking back. As Derek's life unraveled, ours blossomed. The ecotech project at the farm began to thrive, bringing new energy and purpose. Ellie adapted to her new school, making friends and finding joy in the simple pleasures of one evening. As we finished dinner, Ellie looked at me with excitement. Mom, can we invite my friends over to see the farm? They'd love it here. I smiled, my heart swelling with pride. Of course, Ellie, this is our home, and we should share it. Rose and Maxwell nodded in agreement, their faces reflecting the sentiment. With each passing day, the cabin felt more like home, a place of healing and growth. As the sun set on our past struggles, I knew we were ready to embrace whatever future awaited us, brimming with newfound strength and hope. The final court ruling had made it clear, Derek had lost everything. Seeing the news, I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication, but my focus now was entirely on building a new life for Ellie and myself. We officially moved into Rose's cabin. The small space felt cozy and welcoming, filled with the smell of fresh bread and the sound of laughter, elements drastically missing from our old home. Ellie thrived, her once anxious demeanor replaced by a radiant smile. One crisp morning, as we sipped our coffee on the porch, Rose turned to me. Guess what? The ecotech project got mentioned in the local paper again. They're calling it a model for sustainable farming. That's fantastic news, Rose, I exclaimed, feeling immense pride and relief. That afternoon, Ellie had her friends over. They fed the chickens, ran through the fields, and took turns on the tire swing. Their laughter echoed, filling the space with youthful joy. Mom, I love it here, Ellie said, throwing her arms around me. I never want to leave. I'm glad, Ellie. This is our home now, I replied, hugging her back tightly. Meanwhile, Derek took every opportunity to try disrupting our peace. One evening, as we sat down for dinner, my phone buzzed with a message. Derek again? Rose asked, seeing my face tense. Let's see. I opened the message. Derek had somehow found out about our success with the ecotech project. Enjoy your little success while it lasts. You're nothing without me, his text read. I rolled my eyes, showing it to Rose and Maxwell. He's desperate, Maxwell remarked. Ignore him. Agreed. Rose said, he's just trying to rattle you. I nodded, blocking his number. He can't touch us now. We're stronger than he thinks. Over the next months, Derek's situation worsened. He lost his house and friends, his reputation in tatters. Occasionally, I'd hear bits of news about his struggles, but I remained focused on our new life. His downfall was a testament to the karma that had finally caught up with him. One morning, we were interrupted by an unexpected knock at the door. Karen stood there, looking pleased. Good news, she announced. Derek's been sentenced to prison for fraud. The chapter is truly closed. A rush of relief swept over me. Thank you, Karen, for everything. You earned this, Hannah, she replied. Now, live your best life. As Karen left, Rose clapped her hands, gathering everyone outside. This calls for a celebration. We spent the day enjoying an impromptu barbecue, Ellie playing with her friends and Maxwell strumming his guitar. The air was filled with laughter and music, a sharp contrast to the struggle and pain we'd endured. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Ellie snuggled up beside me, her eyes reflecting the twinkling stars. Mom, I'm so glad we're here. I feel free, she said softly. I kissed her forehead. Me too, Ellie. We're exactly where we belong. That night, as everyone settled into the cabin, I took a moment to step outside. The sky was clear and the stars shone brightly. I breathed in the fresh mountain air, feeling the weight of the past lift completely. Our new beginning wasn't without its challenges, but it was filled with hope and endless possibilities. Here, surrounded by family and nature, we had found our sanctuary. And as Derek faced the consequences of his actions, I felt a deep sense of justice. This life, this freedom, was the karma he could never touch. For Ellie and me, it was a testament to our resilience and a promise of a brighter future.